We're joined right now by Larry Kudlow, top economic advisor in the White House. Larry, good morning to you. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Stu. Appreciate it.
I want to talk TikTok. The president wants to take a piece of the sale price of TikTok, whomsoever it might go to. He's going to try to take a piece of a private transaction. What do you make of that?
Well, look, I don't know. There's no specific blueprint here. The big thing is, in 45 days, if IBM and TikTok can come up with the right plan, which allows for all the necessary software, information, personal security, president is inclined to go with it. That's the key point.
It's an extraordinary precedent, Larry. The president acting as almost a broker in a deal with the Treasury taking its piece. We've never seen anything like that before.
True enough, I guess. I can't remember, but look, I don't know if that's a key stipulation. It may be that the president was thinking because the Treasury has had to do so much work on this. There are a lot of options here. I'm not sure it's a specific concept that will be followed through. Right now, the key point is the transaction can go ahead in 45 days if all of the concerns are met. Those are the concerns on security, and those are the concerns on information. There's going to be some software patches and so forth. We'll see. But I think on the whole, it's a very good idea. It's a very promising idea if it meets all of our security concerns. I think that's the key point. Regarding fees or anything like that, all that remains to be seen.
Okay. Here's another one on what the president can do and what he can't do. I want to talk about the stimulus talks. They're still ongoing. I got it. But we're hearing talk that the president would use an executive order to juice the economy, get a stimulus plan going. Can he do that?
Well, I think he can in certain cases, yes. Maybe not all cases. Look, I've felt myself that this should be a growthier plan in general. And as you know, the president has favored the payroll tax. Democrats seem to be very opposed to that, so Republicans have backed off. I don't know if that's the final word. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. There are other measures that are being discussed in the Senate. For example, a so-called cash out of net operating losses. So in March, we created the NOL. You can carry backwards your losses in 2020. Everybody's going to lose money in 2020. There may be a way to have a refundable tax credit to give companies the juice this year. That probably requires legislation, but it might not require legislation. Expensing would require legislation. There's no question about that. Regarding an idea by my pal Steve Moore, deferrals, I think strictly speaking, legally, that could be done by executive order. I'm not sure, though, that it would play very well on either side of the aisle in Congress. Steve's a good guy, and he wants to make it growthier, too. I think if you're going to go payroll tax, you're better off cutting the tax rate. I also think, by the way, one very important issue. Look, the two things that are really front and center is the extension of the eviction moratorium.
Yep.
That, I think, can be done by executive order, particularly because in March, the way that was done, it was federally backed, Fannie, Freddie, FHA, and that was done administratively by HUD. That, I think, could be done. We've got to fix and extend the unemployment issue right now. I don't think that can be done administratively. I think that requires an act of Congress. But that stuff should be done right away. We should get an extension on the unemployment right away and then work to reform it over a period of time, all of which is doable. I don't know what we're waiting for.
Mick Mulvaney has been on this program twice in the recent past. Both times he said, look, there is no way on God's green earth that 3 months before an election, the politicians won't be out there spending at least $1 trillion. You're nodding your head. I think you agree with that. It's going to happen. There's going to be money spent.
Money will be spent. Mick Mulvaney is a great American and a former budget director and chief of staff and a friend of mine. Look, you're going to get a package. I don't want to look. They're making some progress, as reported correctly in most of the media accounts. The talks are becoming more productive. I'm not here to negotiate or anything like that. I don't know what the timing is going to be. We will see.
But you've no doubt that something gets passed. No doubt at all.
one has to always have doubts these days. Politics and legislation, it's pretty tricky business. You never quite know what's going to happen. I just want to say, though, one thing. It would be awfully good to get this done and provide some confidence and reassurances. It would be awfully good to make it growthier with some of these tax ideas and perhaps some more deregulation. That would help. I do want to say, though, good news front. Look, you're getting now nationwide some flattening in the cases and the fatalities, and it's starting to hook down. It's still a level that's too high. There's still a lot of hardship out there, not suggesting otherwise. But, again, using the guidelines, right, distancing and masking and hygiene, and where applicable, testing. You want to open the schools. You want to open the businesses. You want to get people back to work. You want to get the economy going. The ISM report was fantastic for manufacturing. And, by the way, the new orders component was fantastic. And you've got a situation where inventories are rock bottom. Car sales are being replenished. Car production is being replenished. Housing is in a boom-like situation. And I think some flattening in July, but I think the employment numbers are going to be very strong. I think unemployment has continued to decline. Congress should just get going, make it as growthiest as possible, and just get it done to provide some confidence so we can get on with the great business of American prosperity. That's what I want to see.
But you're fighting the lockdown of the economy, the closure of the economy. There are some big population Democrat states which are not coming out of the lockdown easily and quickly. And we have the president of the Minneapolis Fed saying, look, we need another lockdown to save the economy. We ran that soundbite just a few moments ago. But there's an enormous amount of pressure to keep things locked down, which will affect the V, and it will certainly affect the third quarter growth figures, which we get right before the election.
Yeah, well, the Atlanta Fed GDP now is now scoring Q3 at 20%. You've heard that from me any number of times in the last few weeks. I'm going to stay with that. I do not believe a lockdown is a good idea at all. I think you've got to take the mitigation measures in the hot spots, as I said, the four guidelines. But I don't think any lockdown is a good idea. I don't think locking schools down is a good idea. I think we should do everything we can, everything humanly possible with safety and security to keep the stores open, to keep the schools open, to keep the economy open. Because, look, it's not just about the virus, which hopefully nationwide is now flattening out and trending back down. That's the hope, all right? But it's also our well-being. It's also our psychological well-being. It's our personal well-being. I mean, there's huge problems with these lockdowns. We've learned that. I believe we did it right last winter. I believe if you follow the guidelines, we'll keep the mitigation on the right path right now. But this idea of more lockdowns, people just throw this out willy-nilly, forgetting the enormous human cost as well as the enormous economic cost. The country can't take that, and there's no reason for that, particularly because the mitigation, once again, appears to be working. So let's get with it. Let's get America moving again. You'll get your 20%. The V-shaped recovery, I think, is still in place. Thanks for having me, Stu. I love it.
Were you getting the time cues as well as me? Because rap, I was getting it pretty harsh.
I could feel it. I've been in the business. I could feel it coming.
Yes, you have. Remember it well. Larry, thank you very much for joining us.